AHRI the Nine-Tailed Fox was released in 2011, and I've never actually played her. Maybe a game or two here or there, but I never sat down and given this champion an honest try. And that isn't because I think she's bad or anything, or hard to climb with, I just never found her particularly exciting. She's a very simple champion with a very simple kit, and at the time of her release, there was already all these other champions just coming out that I found much more enjoyable, like Graves and Fizz, so I didn't really have an interest in giving AHRI a fair shot. But now with every champion being released nowadays needing a PhD to understand, yeah, I'm talking about champions like Aphelios and reworked Akali, I just kind of want to sit down and play a more simple champion and just see how much I can get out of them. So I did exactly what the title said. I played AHRI for a week straight. Here's what I learned. Full disclaimer, I did mess up a bit here, as I did play some games on a different account and some games in normals, but 90% of the games played here are in the Platinum 4/3 range, and for future videos, all games done with the character will be done on my main account and in ranked only. This was just a test format, and I kind of messed it up. I didn't really know exactly how I wanted to go about this early on, so I do apologize for that, but moving forward, we will only be doing this in ranked only on the main account. Going into this challenge, I really didn't know what to expect from it. My initial thoughts were that I was going to do very poorly during the first few games and would improve over time, but that isn't what happened at all. It was the complete opposite. I actually won my first few games with relative ease, and I believe this is due to AHRI's simple nature. She does exactly what you expect from her and nothing else. Over time though, as I got more games with AHRI, I didn't really notice a significant improvement in my play with the champion, aside from just holding my charms a bit more and getting a bit more matchup experience. That doesn't mean she's completely one-dimensional though, as depending on what runes you take with her, your build and playstyle will completely change how you pilot her, almost as if you got two different champions in one, either a complete one-shot assassin or a pseudo-support perma-slow mage kind of things. It's kind of weird, we're gonna get into it now. So let's talk about that. With AHRI, you got two different main rune pages, the first being the Glacial Augment route, going for, well, you know, Glacial Augment, Magical Footwear, Biscuit Delivery, or Futures Market depending on the matchup. If you're in a matchup in which you can get poked down a lot, I would personally go Biscuits, but if it's a more passive matchup or a matchup I know they can't kill me, say a Cassidy for example, I would opt for Futures Market. And lastly, Cosmic Insight, because, well, it's Cosmic Insight, it's the best one in that tree. I never really found a use for minion deminitalizer, I can't pronounce it, please don't sue me, as you have incredibly good wave clear with just your Q regardless. Then for your secondary tree, you want to go Domination, opting for Cheap Shot as you proc it for free with Glacial Augment, and also going Ultimate Hunter. Now I do see some AHRIs going Ingenious Hunter, and you can go this if you like it, it is more of a playstyle preference, but I find without the active CDR on my ulti, I'm just kind of a walking charm machine, and I don't feel like I provide enough to the team without it. But that's just me, you guys can do what you like, they're both perfectly fine. When going this rune set, your build is pretty much going to be the same every game, with it being Doran's Rings and 2 health pots into Hextech JOP, then Spooky Ghost, and your third item onward is situational, as AHRI is incredibly flexible in which you can build. But for a safe template, if the enemy team can dive you, I would go Zanya's. If not, then I would generally go something like Rabadons or Morellos because they're pretty safe buys. Now for boots, I would generally go Sork boots, but in games in which I didn't build Zanya's, I'd actually rush Boots of Ionians instead to cap out my CDR faster. As this build is more utility focused, the loss of damage really isn't that big of a deal, as you're relying on your true damage from your Q to do the bulk of the damage instead. And late game, you really want to have as much uptime on your charm and ultimate as possible to enable the picks for your team. For the second true, we have the Domination route. Going Electrocute is our keystone. With this path, we intend to be an all-in burst mage, sacrificing utility from Glacial Augment for raw DPS. To do this, we take Electrocute as it's incredibly easy to proc on AHRI and does add a considerable amount of damage to our rotation, giving us tremendous kill pressure in lane even without a jungler. And you know, with solo queue, you generally don't have a jungler, so the solo kill pressure is always welcomed. But after Electrocute, we go Taste of Blood, as we no longer have a reliable way to proc Cheap Shot anymore, and it's just the best alternative, Eyeball Collection to maximize our DPS, and Ultimate Hunter for the same reasons as before. For our secondary tree, we go Sorcery, as this tree is incredibly flexible, I generally like to go Mana Flow Bind and Scorch to maximize my kill pressure lane, but you could also take Transcendence, Nullifying Orb, or Gathering Storm as needed. You could also go Resolve or Inspiration if you like. I have just found the most success with going Sorcery secondary. Now for the build, you go Doran's Rings and 2 health pots, into Luden's Echo, Morello's, or Zanya's depending on the matchups, into Death Cap, into flex items. So the skill order. At first I always went Q max first into W, as it was always the most obvious choice, but as I kept playing I realized even if I max out W second, going either build either Electrocute or Glacial Augment, I could kill squishies in one rotation regardless, so the extra on W was kind of just negligible unless it was for a really extended team fight. After realizing this, I decided it was better to max E second instead, as it increases the duration of the CC every rank, and this is important as when you go mid and late game and are grouped more often, you want to be able to have the enemy CC longer to be able to make those picks with your team. And for the little runes on the bottom, for both pages, you go the usual stuff, double adaptive and your armor MR depending on the matchup. And for summoners, you want to go Ignite Flash or Cleanse. 99% of the games though, you will want to take Ignite, as it's just going to give you more kill pressure all around. So let's talk about laning. Early game, Ahri has a great laning phase and doesn't really have a lot of terrible matchups, the worst being matchups in which they can outpush you from a safe distance, say Xerath, or matchups in which they can outright bully you like Nico. Assuming you didn't pick Ahri into a terrible matchup though, generally what you're looking to do during the laning phase is harass the enemy laner whenever they walk up to CS with a max range Q, and if you went the Electrocute route, you definitely want to be the aggressor here. This isn't as important with Glacial Ahri, but with Electrocute you need to rack up the early kills if you're going to be useful throughout the game. Post level 6, you want to look for all-ins. Ahri has a deceptive amount of burst level 6 if you land everything. Just remember, weave in your auto attacks. In between every dash and during the charm, weave in autos. You have no idea how many kills I would have lost if I was not weaving in these autos in between. They hurt quite a bit early on. Let's say you can't kill the enemy laner though, just because they're playing too passive or they're just too tanky, then what I like to do in that situation is just shove out the wave, because Ahri has such incredible wave clear, and look for plays with your jungler or just rotate to one of the side lanes. Since you have so much pick potential with your ultimate and charm, it is incredibly easy to roam as Ahri and pick up these kills. So mid and late game. So you got out of the laning phase. Well, at this point, depending on what setup you went, you want to play this two different ways. If you went Electrocute, you're going to want to play this like an assassin. Wait for what you think the squishies would be and try to one-shot them and force uneven fights in your favor. I generally like to go Oracle Lens when going the assassin route for the higher pick potential. With Glacial Ahri though, I generally would stay grouped with my team for the most part, within reason though. Don't stay grouped with your team if there's no fights to be had. I see this so often in Justice Elo as a whole, but people love to ARAM for no reason. Even though you provide a lot of utility to the team, you're going to fall behind if you don't grab solo XP and gold. So unless there's an objective coming up, or you know you guys can force an easy fight in your favor, just play the side lanes and have your team siege. As for late game, it pretty much goes the same for both routes. You're mostly a walking charm bot at this point in the game, and trying to get the enemy carry is pretty difficult since everyone is going to be perma 5-man grouped. So stay with your team and try to land those charms to swing the fight in your favor. Okay, so when it comes to the tips, the first tip I can give is what I mentioned before, is to weave in auto attacks in between your ult charges and when they're charmed. You're going to be covering a lot of distance with your ult and you're not going to have your abilities up throughout all of it, so make sure to weave in the autos early to secure those kills. There really isn't a whole lot to say about Ahri in terms of tips, but this is probably the biggest one. Know when to use your charm. Now, this mostly applies during the laning phase when you're most vulnerable. Of course, if you can land on a charm on the enemy laner, go for it, but just make sure they aren't baiting it out so the jungler can come in and kill you. Without charm, you're quite literally a walking fox. People are often going to try and juke your charm, but you have to have the patience to hold onto it and wait for the right moment. Like, look at this clip. I know this Yi wants to dive me. I mean, hell, we see his ult going off. What else is he gonna do? But he thinks I'm going to just waste my charm right away and die. But because I saved until after he alpha strikes, I land the guaranteed charm and secure the kill. There is nothing Yi could have done there except hope I messed up. So my final thoughts. Getting into this challenge, I thought I would absolutely hate it, as Ahri has never been a champion I really cared to play, but I found myself quite enjoying her and enjoying the learning process overall. When I started this challenge, I sat at plat 4 40 LP, and by the end of this, I'm plat 4 60 LP, which isn't exactly a big gain at all. It's literally one win, but I went into plat 3 promos twice and failed it, sadly, but not much you could do about it. If you're watching this and wondering whether or not you should pick up Ahri, absolutely. She's a very basic champion who's incredibly flexible in what she does and will teach you a lot about macro play overall, which is something I feel a lot of people need to improve on, myself included. And that's the video. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, please like, comment, subscribe, as this is the first of many. I do plan on making more of these, and for our next one, I want you guys to decide who I play. I will take the most liked comment and play the champion for a week, assuming it's not just a general troll pick, of course. The only restriction there will be is that it's going to either be mid, top, or jungle, as I'm not really a bot lane player, but I will eventually have you guys vote for bot laners for me to play. Also, I would love your feedback as well, as this is my first ever video. Did you guys enjoy it? Do you think there are things I should have included or elaborate more on? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next week.